So, guys, thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your support, by the way. Thank you for also subscribing. And for those who haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe. So, I don't know if you remember the exact moment that you first heard the name Ibrahim Traoré. For most people around the world, it wasn't a military leader or a military takeover. It wasn't an headline. It was just a speech, a few minutes long speech, a very powerful one, by the way. And it was so powerful to the point that it could put a young leader from Burkina Faso on the global map. Let's listen to the speeches and then I'll be back to do more analysis,
The citizen vigilance that you have engaged is a message to all of Africa. And Burkina Faso is in solidarity and supports all the peoples of Africa who suffer martyrdom. But we also want to say that it is time for Africans to stop pitying themselves, to stop moping, to stop lamenting. You have to fight. It will not come from heaven alone. You have to fight first, and God will help you. The speech you are about to listen to is the single speech that made France, through ECOWAS and the West, to want to take out Captain Ibrahim Traoré right now. This fierce speech ripped the mask off imperialism, exposing the West's many decades-long sabotage and calling on Africans to fight for real sovereignty. Traoré didn't just name the enemy, he laid bare their entire playbook, from manufactured terror to economic strangulation. He shattered the old illusion that Africans must forever beg or obey. And he made it clear, this continent will no longer be a playground for imperialists. This definitely angered them to the core, and now we see their moves and tactics to try to take out Traoré. This speech will fire you up. Have a listen, and please, comrades, I would like us to give thanks to God who has shown us this day and who has allowed us to gather here. Let us pay homage to our FDS and our valiant VDP who are fighting on the front lines, and it is thanks to them that we can gather here to commune. Let us also pay homage to you, those who have been nicknamed the Watchmen. And you who watch over this transition, you who watch over the path we have traced, thank you very much. We cannot make a revolution without communicating. Some will say that we should not talk too much, but when we do not talk, manipulation takes over the field. Understand something. The father of the revolution communicated a lot. I am speaking here of Thomas Sankara. In one of his speeches, he told you this: imperialism is a bad student because when it is chased out of the classroom, it comes back. It always comes back. And I remember that in his address to his peers in ECOWAS, he said that to cut the umbilical cord that binds us to imperialism, you would not look for a state magician with clever fingers, a well-sharpened scissor to cut this cord. But rather, you would need a robust lumberjack with a well-sharpened axe to give a sharp blow and cut the cord. That says it all. I will explain a little how imperialism behaves. After the assassination of the father of the revolution, precisely the regime that imperialism wanted was installed. In the 90s, you all remember a program that was imposed on us, the Structural Adjustment Program. It was a plan. I will explain. By implementing this program in our countries, you noticed, over the 2 decades that followed, that all our factories that were in place were privatized. Our economy was destructured.
Notre économie a été déstructurée. Ils ont mis en place
They put in place a neo-colonial system, a system of wild capitalism that only benefits the leaders and their friends, a restricted circle. On the side of the forces, they did everything to destruct our armies. They said to lower the army budgets, to no longer equip them, to no longer train them, which was done in the sub-region. Our armies were reduced to nothing. They were preparing things. During this time, large countries like Niger and Mali experienced a resurgence of what they called rebellions. Separatists, who came from nowhere, tried to divide these countries. They did not succeed, but the culmination of their plan was that from the 2010s, that is, 20 years later, terrorism invited itself into our territories. Indeed, we saw it born 20 years later. Individuals were chosen, and they were simply told, go fight them. Their armies are destructured. We have worked to make this happen. They will never be able to stop you, and you will impose what we want. These individuals recruited innocent, ignorant young people in our various campaigns, to whom they gave drugs, and led them to kill their compatriots, and evil was born. How were these individuals maintained? Do not forget that here in Burkina Faso, we were hosting terrorist leaders. It was well planned. And how to achieve this? When these terrorists were about to launch, there was someone who could perhaps intervene in favor of our states. I am naming here the late General Muammar Gaddafi. He had to be eliminated. And one fine day they fell on him. They eliminated him. They also had in this plan the ingenious idea of putting all sources of weapons and ammunition at the disposal of these terrorists who were to destruct our sub-region. The plan was perfect, and then they got into battle order. They started to descend towards the south. We still remember when the regime in place in Bamako at the time called on foreign forces.
The questions that my generations are asking are the following. If I may summarize, it is not understanding how Africa, with so many riches on our soil, with a generous nature of water, abundant sunshine. Africa is today the poorest continent. Africa is a hungry continent. And how is it that we, as heads of state, travel the world begging? These are questions we are asking ourselves, and for which we have no answers so far. We have the opportunity to forge new relationships, and I hope these relationships can be the best to provide a better future for our peoples. My generation also asks me to say that due to this poverty, they are forced to cross the ocean to try to reach Europe. They die in the ocean, but soon they will not cross because they will come to our palaces to seek their daily sustenance. As for Burkina Faso, today we have been facing for more than 8 years the most barbaric, the most violent form of neocolonialism, of imperialism. The slavery that they still tend to impose on us. Our predecessors taught us one thing well, The slave who is not capable of assuming his revolt does not deserve pity for his fate. We do not pity ourselves, and we do not ask anyone to pity us. The Burkinabe people have decided to fight against the terrorists in order to revive their development. In this struggle, brave peoples, courageous populations have committed to taking up arms against terrorism, those whom we have affectionately called the VDP, the volunteers. We are surprised to see the imperialists label these VDP as militias and all sorts of things. It's disappointing because in Europe, when people take up arms to defend their homeland, they are called patriots. Our grandfathers were deported to save Europe. It was not with their consent, against their will. And well, upon their return, we remember well that in Traoré, when they wanted to claim their basic rights, they were massacred. So it doesn't matter then. When we, the people, decide to defend ourselves, we are labeled as a militia. But that is not the problem. The problem is seeing African heads of state who bring nothing to these people who are fighting, but who sing the same tune as the imperialists by labeling us as a militia, by calling us people who do not respect human rights. What human rights are we talking about? We are outraged by this, and it is shameful. We, African heads of state, must stop behaving like puppets that dance every time the imperialists pull the strings. Yesterday, President Vladimir Putin announced the sending of grains to Africa. We are very pleased. We thank him for that. But also, it is a message sent to our African heads of state, because at the next forum, we should not come here without having ensured for those who do not know war, the food self-sufficiency of our peoples. We must learn from the experience of those who have already achieved this in Africa, build good relationships here, and foster better relations with the Russian Federation to meet the needs of our populations. I may not be long, the allotted time is very short. We are obliged to stop at some point, but I would like to conclude by saying that we must pay tribute to our peoples who are fighting.
At the Group of 20 held on the 22nd and 23rd of November 2025, before 22 leaders of the world's leading powers, a shocking moment occurred. The president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, stepped onto the stage and completely broke traditional diplomatic norms. In a declaration that left the entire hall stunned, he forcefully condemned, "The African Union no longer exists. It survives only on paper." That statement struck like a direct blow to Africa's largest institution, something no leader had dared to say for many decades, especially at the very center of the Group of 20. What drove a young leader to challenge an organization representing more than 1 billion people? Why choose this moment? And why do millions of Africans see him as their voice? When the Group of 20 convened for its annual summit, Burkina Faso's presence was seen as little more than a diplomatic courtesy. A small, landlocked nation, better known for instability than influence, was granted observer status. A symbolic gesture many assumed would pass quietly, but the world misjudged both the moment and the man representing it, President Ibrahim Traoré. Global leaders anticipated the familiar script. They expected mentions of Sahel terrorism, appeals for international support, and discourse about regional development. After all, this is what African heads of state typically bring to the global stage. But Traoré, representing a Burkina Faso that had already broken from old patterns, delivered something radically different. Standing before presidents, prime ministers, and economic giants, he laid out a blunt indictment. Africa's largest political institution, the African Union, no longer represents the continent it claims to serve. He reminded the Group of 20 that the African Union had suspended Burkina Faso at the exact moment the country was rebuilding its economy and reclaiming national security without foreign dependency. While Burkina Faso fought for its sovereignty, the African Union, influenced by outside powers, imposed sanctions without speaking to the people affected by them. In Traoré's words, it was a betrayal disguised as diplomacy. His message was simple but devastating. An institution that punishes independence is not an institution of Africans. The room stiffened, delegates exchanged glances. Some were startled, others quietly intrigued. A few Western officials noted how rare it was to hear a leader challenge continental politics on an international stage. Traoré did not stop there. He spoke about legitimacy, how institutions lose moral authority when they prioritize foreign approval over African lives. He reminded the group of 20 that Burkina Faso, despite sanctions, was stabilizing faster than several nations still dependent on external donors. This was not arrogance, it was evidence. In that moment, Ibrahim Traoré transformed Burkina Faso from an observer into a catalyst, forcing leaders to confront a truth rarely spoken in global forums. And across Africa news networks, his words spread like wildfire, resonating especially with young Africans who felt long ignored. But this confrontation did not begin in the Group of 20 hall. It began long before the summit, and the roots of this confrontation explain why Traoré chose to deliver this message.
Thank you, amazing people, for watching and listening to the speeches of Ibrahim Traoré. It's now my time to do analysis, to do commentary, a deep understanding of what the speeches really meant. So here is why the speech of Ibrahim Traoré really matters or mattered. When he came out boldly, confidently in the podium and talked to the leaders of Africa. His speech, when he came out and talked to Africans, he never sounded like a politician, by the way. He had no polished diplomacy. There was no begging for approval from the Western countries. His speeches, if you notice, they are not carefully rehearsed in any way. So he just came out authentically. He spoke like somebody who was tired of pretending. And when he stood there and talked about sovereignty, about Africa's resources, about dignity, you could hear it in his voices. It was not just for cameras like what other African leaders do. I mean, you could see the frustration turning into clarity. And what caught everybody's attention, including him, it's not what he said, but it was who he said it to. And my good people, he wasn't addressing any donor. He was not trying to impress foreign leaders. He was just speaking to their heads, straight to them, straight to Africans as well, honestly, to anyone probably in the world who understands what exploitation looks like. My good people, I know now that you get to understand why whenever Ibrahim Traoré, stands in the podium and speaks, the room goes quiet. That is because whatever he says it loudly, confidently, boldly, and is saying things that other leaders could not dare say in public. They only say them in private. And the message that is trying to be pushed here is that Africa cannot keep exporting wealth and importing poverty. That is the message that most leaders fear saying, while in public they only talk about it in private. So, my good people, Ibrahim Traoré's speech did not actually make him popular everywhere. It made him dangerous, but politically, okay? So the moment he started questioning the old power structures, the tone changed. Suddenly, he was being labeled like, a traitor. He was being watched. And of course, the language shifted to concerns, stability. You know what happens when it comes to African leaders when they start talking the truth? Anyway, you know how that goes. I know you understand. When a leader speaks too clearly, the labels start coming very fast. That is supporting, this particular militia group. He's doing this, he's stealing that, and just a lot of stories. So this speech that Ibrahim Traoré, what he said in the speech, it's not about Burkina Faso, by the way. It's about a generation of Africans who are asking, why are we rich in resources but poor in reality? Why do foreign interests always seem protected before local people? Why? By the way, genuine question. Why is demanding control over your own future considered radical? Why? Ibrahim Traoré did not invent those questions, by the way, just said them without fear. And that is why his clips, his speeches are everywhere and they are actually very viral. Most phones, even your phones, I know, even your phone, you cannot miss seeing a video or a speech of Ibrahim Traoré. WhatsApp groups, all these particular social media platforms, YouTube, you'll find them. You know why? Because these videos are actually honest. This world is full of scripted leaders. It's full of scripted leaders, and honestly, it's hard to find a genuine leader. So when people ask, how did Ibrahim Traoré become a global figure, like really fast? We have a very simple answer for that. He didn't campaign his way there. He spoke his way there. One speech, one moment of clarity, and suddenly the world had to pay attention, whether they liked him or not. That's the real power of his speeches, you know. It actually didn't ask for permission. It did not try to soften the message. It planted a flag and said, we are done being quiet. And once that happens, there is no going back. Thank you guys if you watched the clip up to this point. I appreciate your presence. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.